I did figure something out in college that kind of erased friendship drama from my life. It's been at least, how old am I? I'm 31, turning 32 in a couple of months. And I don't think I've had a real problem with a friend in, let's call it 10 years. And I think it's because of what I now call the 6 besties theory. So what is the 6 besties theory? The 6 besties theory is based on my belief that we have different friends for different purposes in life. We start to get in all sorts of trouble when we expect every friend to check every box of what we're looking for in friendship. The 6 besties theory is a framework to help you reevaluate your expectations of your friends. Because sometimes our expectations, by no fault of our own, are just way off. Or maybe they were right at one point, but then as our lives changed and we've grown up, we haven't given ourselves a chance to reevaluate them. As the name suggests, there are 6 different archetypes, 6 different besties within the framework. We have good time bestie, work bestie, seasonal bestie, dead body bestie, OG bestie, short for original, and then one final bestie, which I'll save for the end. While I'm going through these characteristics, I want you to think about some of the friends you have in your life. People who you love, but maybe you're a little bit unsure of where and how they fit into your life. Think about those friends, and while I'm going through the different types of characteristics, check in your mind if there's any correlation. First, the good time bestie. The good time bestie is somebody who you like to hang out with. After a long day, you're down to go and gab with this person. Time out with them feels energizing. The thing about a good time bestie, and not all good time besties are this way, but sometimes good time besties aren't the person who knows you and understands you in your truest colors. They're not the person, at least right off the bat, who you're gonna share your deepest, darkest secret. They're a fun friend, and this isn't to say that fun friends can't also be deep friends, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes you meet someone and the way you connect really is about, do I even want to call them superficial topics? Because I don't think that enjoying the same types of restaurants and movies and culture, I don't think any of those things are superficial, but maybe on the scale of knowing someone and really seeing them. The good time bestie, if that's all they are, they don't get to your deeper layers. So that's a good time bestie. And then we have the work bestie. Typically a work bestie has transcended the office or whatever your workspace is. Maybe you've hung out on the weekend. Maybe they've met your significant other. They're the person who you can trust that if you vent to them about something going on with a project, you know they have your back. You know they're saying kind things about you in every room that you're not in. Now this one is sometimes controversial because some people believe that you shouldn't make close friends at work, but many of my work besties have become my lifelong closest friends. Work bestie. Then we have a seasonal bestie. Seasonal here means the season of your life. When I was in college, for example, I was in the art school, but I also was a creative writing minor, and I made lots of friends through my creative writing program. At that time in my life, I would have called my creative writing friends my seasonal besties. They were joining me in that season of my life. If you're a new parent, I'd say a seasonal bestie would be people you meet in your new mom group, new dog owner. If you're joining a bowling league, that's the season of your life you're in. Bowling is your hobby you're exploring. Seasonal besties. Next up, the dead body bestie. The dead body bestie is the person in your life who you can call and they will help you get out of any problem, no questions asked. Now, save for real terrible people who I don't necessarily think should have this person in their life, we all deserve a person in our life who can help us resolve our problems without making us feel bad about it. Maybe you haven't talked to them in a year. Maybe you haven't had a real catch up in a long ass time. They don't care. The dead body bestie bond is so deep, it transcends any amount of time passing. Now, you might be thinking that already some of these are starting to overlap. Be like, hey, you know what? Actually, my good time bestie is also a dead body bestie. That's fine. That's great. Don't get hung up on that yet. 5th bestie is the OG bestie, the original bestie. Somebody who you have known for a long time. Maybe it's a person from your hometown. They've seen every era of you. They know your parents or they know whoever raised you. They have a lot of context for why you are the way you are, and you have that same context for them. They've made it to OG bestie status, you've grown up together and you've allowed each other to transition into these new stages of life. Or maybe you haven't. And this is where I think the tension starts to bubble up for OG besties. Part of what makes somebody an OG bestie is that you do sometimes reach a point of life where you're not so connected anymore in terms of daily or regular communication. But talking less does not mean that you are less close, at least in my world and according to the 6 besties theory. I'm thinking about some of my high school best friends who are so deeply cherished to me. I know that we would always be there for each other when we're in need, or not even in need or in joy, but we don't talk all the time. I don't know the minutia of what's going on in their life, but it doesn't feel threatening because we're bonded by this OG bestie status forever. The OG bestie really comes into clarity when we put it next to the 6th and final bestie, which is the North Star bestie. The North Star bestie is the bestie that I think everybody thinks of when they think of a best friend. This is a person who makes you feel more like yourself. The North Star besties in my life, many of whom are also other besties in the theory, my North Star besties, when I talk to them, I feel more connected to who I truly am. I feel braver, I feel more ready to take on the world. They're the people who make you realize how hard you have to try with everybody else. And sometimes you see that spark in somebody way before you're even North Star bestie status. As I've gotten older and more comfortable with who I am, which I have a lot of work to do in truly being confident and being myself when I meet new people. But I can tell within 20 minutes of meeting someone and talking to them one-on-one, whether we have a spark that could be translated into North Star bestie friendship one day. And sometimes that spark will be there and you don't quite get to North Star bestie level, but that spark, I think that everybody needs that spark in their life. And it's different from a spark that you have with a romantic partner. If you're gonna be in a monogamous long-term relationship, I definitely think the person that you choose, you want them to be a combination of these, but we want to have those deep, rich, meaningful sparks outside of our love life too. When you look at these holistically, I think people really struggle with when a North Star bestie becomes an OG bestie, which is bound to happen in every single one of our lives. That's one tension point. But then another tension point, I think, is that some people secretly want every single friend to be a North Star bestie. But if all you want is for people to be a North Star bestie in your life, you might miss out on some other really precious friendships. And that's what I want the 6 Besties theory to help us do, to help us understand that not every friend, not every close friend, needs to check every single box. You might even have a North Star bestie who doesn't fit in the season of your life that you're in. I have North Star besties who are moms, and I'm not. We do not share that season of life. And it doesn't matter. I still ask questions and I'm interested in their life as a mother. And they also have other friends who are moms that they can bond with in a way that they can't bond with me. And that's okay. I don't feel threatened by that. You might have a good time bestie who you've secretly been wanting to be your North Star bestie. And actually you've become so resentful. Maybe you've suffered some real tragedy in your life. Let's say a parent died when you were young. Some people are not going to understand grief. I do think that there's a, how do I want to say this? Not that there's a hierarchy of grief, but I do think that if you've experienced some, profound loss, sometimes it can be hard to talk about that profound loss with people who have not experienced profound loss yet. You might have a really close friend and you've been kind of resentful of them because they can't connect with you in that way, or you want to share with them and maybe they didn't respond to you in a way that completely made you feel totally seen. Rather than shut them down and say, okay, we can't be friends anymore because you don't get that, you can say, you know what, maybe they're just more of a good time bestie. Instead of focusing on what my good time bestie doesn't provide me, I'm gonna focus on what they do provide, which is lots of love and laughs. Friends don't need to check every single box, is what I'm trying to say. There's no questioning that the 6 Besties theory has changed my life for the better. So why, since I shared it with the world, have I become kind of resistant to it?
I have a theory called the 6 Besties
I have a
theory.
friendship theory, which I
This
call
is part of my
6
Besties theory.
which is
Let's talk about a bestie in my theory that sometimes gets a bad rap. I'm talking about
into what I call my 6 Besties theory. By popular demand, here's all the besties in one video.
I was trying to pinpoint when exactly I lost my personal plot about 6 Besties theory. I'm such a process-driven person. I really care about how I come to things. And I think the thing that happened with 6 Besties theory is as soon as I shared it, as soon as I tried to articulate a feeling that I had inside of me and articulated it in a way that I knew or thought might be sticky on the internet, I shared it and then I doubled down on the stickiness of it instead of reflecting back on why I ever made the theory in the first place. And I know that's part of what happens with art. You make it, you put it out into the world, and then it's no longer yours. I think I stopped feeling connected to 6 Besties theory because I almost closed the door on its development. I stunted its growth a little bit. Speaking of besties, I was pretty much ready to write off the 6 Besties theory, and I was doing a brainstorm with a friend, Lauren. I was sort of complaining about the theory, and she urged me, she was like, I think that you need to figure out a way how to reclaim it because it's really powerful. The Besties theory spoke to people because it's powerful. Try to find your love for it again. And that's, I guess, what I'm doing here with this video is wanting to reflect back on where the theory came from, what inspired it in my life to begin with, and where is it now? 6 Besties theory, where are you now? Obviously, when the idea for Six Besties theory first actually came into my life, when I was first touched by the magic of the theory, it didn't come to me as the Six Besties theory. That was a name I created when I was trying to communicate this feeling that I had in my life with an audience on the internet. When we cull it down, Six Besties theory is about having different friends for different purposes. And I think I first realized that in college. And that's actually when I think friendship in my life finally started to really click. I went to University of Michigan, and you rush sororities at Michigan first semester your freshman year. I rushed. I was in Kappa Kappa Gamma. It was great in some ways because it did introduce me to friends and to people who are still my friends today. But I was realizing that I had all these varied interests and that I wanted to spend time with different types of people. I wanted to grow as a person, and it's hard to grow as a person when you're only with one group. I started to make friends with people who were outside of my immediate social circle. And my life kind of started to expand when that happened. I started to notice how nice it was to have different groups of people who I could go to for different things. I didn't need my best friends from my sorority to connect with me about the short story I was writing, because I had people from my creative writing class that I was spending time with that filled that need for me. That isn't to say that sorority friends didn't want to learn about my interests. One of my best friends, Michaela, we lived together my junior year. She would read all of my work for my creative writing workshop. She'd come to some readings with me at Literati, the bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor. The point of the Six Besties theory is not to put people into boxes and not allow them to escape, but it's just to create more flexibility. Whereas if I had no creative writing friends, I might have put a lot of pressure on Michaela to fill all of those boxes for me. But because I had other outlets, she could kind of ebb and flow into some of those interests with me without all of the pressure. Having different friends for different purposes also just helped me feel like a more complex, well-read human being, if a person can be well-read outside of books. I really enjoyed expanding my worldview through expanding the types of people that I was friends with. In college is also probably when I first started to notice how North Star besties were becoming OG besties. Some of my high school friendships were changing as we all went to college. My high school friends, it's kind of an interesting situation. A lot of the people I went to high school with live in the state we grew up in. So a lot of them actually are still close friends. Their core adult group is the same as high school, though expanded too. I used to feel when we first kind of graduated, there were a couple of times when they would all do stuff together and I lived out in New York where I would feel my feelings would feel really hurt. I remember once I saw that they all went on a trip together and my first reaction was wow, why wasn't I invited to that? But then when I thought about it, it's why would I have been invited to that? I'm only friends with a couple of these people. And that doesn't really relate necessarily to Six Besties theory. I can sort of imagine somebody writing to me being some of my OG besties went on a trip with other people we went to high school with and they didn't invite me. Do I have a right to be upset? And as you know, I'll say you always have a right to your feelings, but feelings are different than behavior, and should you do anything about it? And knowing that I have a special OG bestie relationship with a few of my high school friends helped me remember that they have a different relationship with those other people. If my OG besties, they do stuff actually without me all the time because they live together. The Six Besties theory helps us with radical acceptance of where we're at in our life. The language of the Six Besties theory first came to mind with my friend Mimi, who was living in Vietnam at the time. And I had just gotten engaged, so it was the summer of 2019, and she was home in Massachusetts. And we're sitting there, and it had been many years now since we graduated high school and had been in that immediate contact. And we just were sharing our mutual love and appreciation for each other. How special is it to have a friend from your past who you both know you do not need to explain yourself? If you call them at the drop of a hat, they will be there for you. No hard feelings. No, well, you haven't called me in 6 months. None of that. There's no keeping tabs. There's no keeping track. Somewhere in that conversation, when we were sort of having this love fest for each other, one of us came up with we are each other's dead body besties. I wish I could remember. I wish I was a fly on the wall and could hear that conversation. But we said it then, that you are my dead body bestie. I would bury a fucking body for you. And I would do anything for Mimi. I have a very fond place in my heart for the dead body bestie as a character because I think of her. Oop! Oh, shit. Shit. I need to pause and finish the chili. I'm losing track of what I'm doing. Be back soon.
It's
It's really helpful for me to remember where the theory came from, because that reminds me that yes, I do believe in this theory. But what I believe in the most is the idea behind it. Different friends for different purposes, that friends will change. Friends will change roles within the course of our life. Maybe that's what I felt like got lost in the initial videos about Six Besties theory. It's almost like there's like Six Besties 101 and then 102, the same way that you would progress through your major in college. Basic level Six Besties theory of like identifying the different archetypes of friends and thinking about whether your expectations for someone might be misaligned from who they actually are. That's like the basic level. That's what you do when you're kind of not in crisis mode, but when you're in like, oh my God, I'm thinking about my friendships all wrong. I need a new framework to think about this. But then the goal is that you age out of that almost, or not that you age out of it, but you grow out of it. And this habit of like having realistic expectations for people becomes second nature. Like what is not true for me, I do not think about people in my own personal life in terms of North Star bestie, good time bestie. That's not a conscious thing that I'm thinking about. The goal is that the Six Besties framework becomes a natural part of your life, and you understand that not everybody needs to do everything. That's the unlock. I think where things have gone wrong with Six Besties theory is that sometimes we get really attached to the language. And like, I created the language because the language was necessary for the theory to land with people. Like, you do have to give clear language to things, but the language is not what's important here. If you take nothing else away from Six Besties theory, make it be different friends for different purposes. The labels of the friends is just it's only there to help you. If it doesn't help you, ignore that. That's what I want. I really want people to not get so hung up on the actual words. And some of the language stuff is like my own doing. Like, by calling it the Six Besties theory, some people might say, well, a good time bestie isn't actually a bestie. They're just a friend. That to me is semantics. Some people might say that like only a North Star bestie is what a best friend is. And if you feel that way, that's fine. An important differentiator here is that no friend in the Six Besties universe would treat you poorly. And that's kind of a level 2 of this. Like, once you've used the Six Besties framework to take a look at your expectations of people, you are 100% allowed to say, hey, I actually know that my expectations of you are good expectations. They're my expectations, and you don't meet them, and therefore this friendship isn't working. Like, Six Besties theory is not here to excuse bad behavior. I know how tricky that can be, though, sometimes, to decide, like, is this a me problem or is this a them problem? Are they treating me like shit, or am I being overly sensitive? Am I reading into something that isn't there? Are my expectations wrong? And that's a very personal process. But I know that the Six Besties theory has allowed me to love people in my life for who they are. You don't need to love every single thing about your friends. Is that true? I think it's true. You can have things that kind of rub you the wrong way. They don't need to change who they are for you. If somebody's chronically late, you can tell them that you want them to be on time, but like they might never be on time. And you have to decide, well, do they bring other stuff to the table? Like, are they bringing enough to this friendship where I'm going to say, you know what? Hayes is late, and I'm going to build that into my expectations of Hayes. That might ultimately down the line lead to this friendship dying off. And that happens sometimes. But my hope is that the Six Besties theory is there to help us find the good in our friends and potentially stop us from having unnecessary friendship breakups. Come back for part 2. I'm going to be answering a whole list of audience questions about the Six Besties theory. Thank you to everybody who sent them to me on Instagram. People asked, like, how do you cope with a transition from North Star to OG Bestie? Do 2 North Star besties have to be each other's North Star besties? Like, what happens if there's a mismatch? I think it's chili time. I'll see you soon.